With the TBI once again looking into the death of Pauline Pusser, we have to wonder what a remake of Walking Tall might look like with the new facts. If a studio were to remake the movie Walking Tall, what would it look like with all the facts we have today? What scenes would remain? What would be changed, edited out? What would the new story tell? There's a lot of questions here because, you never know, it could happen. If you're under 45 years of age, you may not remember what a big movie Walking Tall was back in 1973 when it was released. It set records. It was one of the biggest movies of the year. Now, while captions said that the movie was based on a few events in Buford's law enforcement career and that it was a fictional account, the movie trailers told us it was a true story. Magazines, newspapers, everyone in the media seemed to pick up on it and led everybody to believe it was a true story. It wasn't. There's an entire generation that have grown up since then and have no idea who Buford Pusser was, what he did, what he didn't do. So there's a whole new market for the story of Walking Tall, the real story this time, not the fictional account like we were shown in 1973. Now, I think a logical place to start the movie would be with Buford graduating high school, wanting to join the Marine Corps, being discharged for asthma, and then returning home, working at a local funeral home before he was discharged for whatever reason, and then going to Chicago, where he was attending mortician school and working as a wrestler at the Buccaneer Club. Of course, they could show Buford working at the Union Bag Company with two of his friends that both came from McNairy County, Jerry Wright and Marvin King Jr. They could show him meeting Pauline, getting married, and then longing to return to his hometown of Adamsville in McNairy County. Of course, it would be imperative for them to show that Buford, Wright, and King came down to the state line and robbed the Plantation Club. Call the clubs and people by their real names. That would be very important. If there was ever a remake, I would urge the director to show the real story. Don't add people that weren't even there. Show what actually happened, that it was not a crowded bar like Walking Tall showed, that W.O. Hathcock was in the Plantation Club by himself when all this happened. There wasn't a gang of state liners there. Show things as it really happened, that it was Marvin King Jr. that W.O. Hathcock said hit him in the back of the head with a blunt object. It wasn't Buford Pusser with a big stick. And show the trial. Show that Buford didn't rip his shirt off and show his scars that were on his chest, because there weren't any. A remake should show why the three men were found not guilty by an Alcorn County jury. I believe it would be very important to show Carl as chief of police in Adamsville, because it will come into the story a little bit later. Then they could show how Buford got into law enforcement, small town of Adamsville, not much going on there before he ran for a position as the constable of the 3rd Civil District of McNairy County, and then decided to run for sheriff. It would also be important to show James Dickey the Democratic candidate being killed, and then introduce George Weatherford to the story, the independent that came within 288 votes of defeating Buford in his first sheriff's race. Be sure and subscribe and hit that bell so that you'll get notifications of new videos when they're released. Just think of all the scenes that we'd have to change from this point. Buford going down to the state line, starting to take the payoffs, having relationships with various women other than Pauline. The way that he killed Louise Hathcock, shot her in the back. They didn't show that in the original movie. Then move on to how that he was afraid of Towhead White, who had escaped a prison in Montgomery, Alabama. Then show how he got shot 4 times by a speeding motorist and how that they were never caught. Show that regardless of what we saw in the movie, Buford's wounds were not serious at all. As a matter of fact, many people from the area think they were self-inflicted. Why intentionally wound yourself? Because Towhead White was the one person that Buford really feared. And many people believe that the shots were self-inflicted so that law enforcement would have a fire built in under them, forcing them to go out, find, and arrest Towhead. A remake should show everything that led up to the ambush. By that I mean 2 people at the Old Hickory Grill overhearing Buford threaten Pauline, Dennis and Johnny following him, seeing a gun exchange in Ishview, the fact that Carl Pusser sent the coroner to the Pusser residence that night, saying that there was a fight there and Buford and Pauline were about to kill each other. Show Diane looking out the window and seeing Buford carry Pauline to the car, place her in the front seat, come back, get the shoes, place them in the floorboard. Show important things that weren't shown in the original movie. Things like LaVon Plunk taking Pauline home, parking down the street, watching Buford pass by, then pull in the driveway, go in the house. She hears a gunshot. Show all that. Show how that she questioned who she could call. That Carl was at the county jail. He would be the one to answer the phone had she called there. Show how she couldn't call her husband and ask for any information because he was one of Buford's favorite deputies, and she suspected that he would probably lie and cover for Buford. Show how Petey called and told LaVon that Pauline had been killed in an ambush meant for Buford. There's so much that they missed in the original movie that would make such a much better plot than what we saw in the original Walking Tall. If you want to learn the real story of Buford Pusser, you need to get my book, Buford Pusser, The Other Story. It is full of facts and information that you don't get anywhere else that I know of. It's the story as told by the people who live their own parts in the real tale. It's full of photographs, documents, lots of interesting things to see, and it pretty well outlines everything from Buford's birth up until the time of his death, and even after that, because the family became embroiled in a lot of lawsuits over his legacy. So again, Buford Pusser, The Other Story. It's available at both Amazon.com and eBay. Another thing the movie could show would be the convoluted route that Buford took. Why take that route when Highway 64 and 45 would have been so much faster? And show that it happened at 4:45 in the morning when it was dark and not during the daylight hours like it was shown in Walking Tall. Show what a difficult time an ambush party would have had trying to chase Buford down with no headlights like he claimed. Show how that investigators wondered why that they would be waiting for him at that church instead of somewhere along on 64 or 45. Then give all the information that led to Pauline's exhumation, how that she has undergone an autopsy, what the autopsy results reveal. There is so much that could bring this story back to life. You know, a lot of people in McNairy County think that the Pusser legend brings a lot of revenue to their county. Just imagine what it would be like if you told the real story as a Wyatt Earp type story, where he walked on both sides of the law. An accurate remake of the movie would rekindle interest in the Pusser story. You'd have a whole new generation watching, and you'd have a lot of people from our generation, my generation, returning to see what the real story was. So I'm not sure I understand some people who live in McNairy County wanting to continue to believe that the old story is the only thing that can bring them revenue. If that's their only objection, they ought to forget it. If they believe that the Pusser legend is true, they ought to look at the real story. As I see the number of viewers on this page rise, I understand that a lot of you probably don't know the real story. So I would encourage you to go back to episode number 1 and watch it all the way through. It'll take some time, sure. Some of it will seem a little bit repetitive. I understand that. But please learn the real story. It's so much more interesting than just the walking tall version. I would also encourage you to go to my Facebook page, Buford Pusser, The Other Story. There are lots of photographs, documents, newspaper clippings, FBI reports that explain everything that I'm telling here. It's just more convenient to look at it there. All you have to do to get a hold of those is just go to the photo section in on the Facebook page. So I'm going to leave it at this for now. I do think it would be interesting to have a remake of the movie. Tell the truth, I do believe that it would boost the economy over in McNairy County because it would bring new tourism to the area. People coming back wanting to see if what we're saying here is correct, as opposed to the story that they were told in the original Walking Tall movie. People should recognize that the TBI did not exhume Pauline on a whim, that there's a lot more that needs to come out. But folks, most importantly, just remember until the next time I see you, truth has no agenda. Thanks for listening.